Okay, yeah, sure.
Hey everyone, good evening. This is Sam Namora here, and I have a very special guest with me tonight. It's my friend Khor. Khor is the president of the South Sudanese Community here, Association, I think, here in Calgary. I think that's the right name for it, isn't it,
Yeah,
Khor?
yeah, yeah.
And also, he's a well-known South Sudanese community leader as well. And I'm very, really happy to have him here, especially in this month, Black History Month celebrations. And hopefully, that will be an opportunity for us to get to know the South Sudanese community in Calgary in general, and also talk about other stuff as well. So, welcome, Kortab.
Thank you, Sam Namori here.
I really appreciate your time being here with us. So, we here, I mean, personally, I was for the longest time, I thought like I want to connect with you, with your community, to tap into the experiences that you accumulated throughout the years. Being here, I would say new communities start probably from what I gathered between in the late '80s and early '90s, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So, would you please give us a little bit the background about the start and the history of the South Sudanese community in Calgary in general, and then we can talk about the new challenges for the community.
Thank you very much, Sam Namura. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you tonight. And I really appreciated your honor and invitation to invite me to come and speak with you on issues and concerns about the greater community in Calgary, or the diverse community in Calgary.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.
You're welcome.
Going back to the history of South Sudanese community, years ago, I think about 1990s, that's when the first South Sudanese individuals or refugees arrived in Canada. And I think the first South Sudanese community member, or the new arrival, was in 1989, if I can remember it correctly.
Right.
That was the first person that landed in Calgary. And I know he's one of my advisor, or an elder in the community here in Calgary. So within those years, when few were just coming to Canada, and by that time it was generally a Sudanese community. So it was not just South Sudanese community, but they initiated or established a community, South Sudanese Community Association, in 1993.
Right.
And then that was not much number of South Sudanese community members that came to Canada. So around 2000 or 1999, the influx of South Sudanese community members started coming to Calgary, especially to Canada, to Canada, and especially to Calgary.
Right.
And I was part of those influx.
Right.
So I came to Canada in 2002, and then moved to Calgary. I was in Vancouver and moved to Calgary in July 2002. So Calgary has become my home.
Right.
And from there, I've been participating in the community and working, of course, and going to school as well. So yeah, from then, the South Sudanese community, or the Sudanese community, Calgary has been home to them. And in 2011, then South Sudan got independent from the general bigger country, Sudan.
Right.
So then now there is a South Sudanese community that is separated from the north. So that's the little bit of background about South Sudanese community.
So the start of the influx roughly around 1999,
99, 2000, around there, yeah.
And roughly how big is the community now in Calgary area?
In Calgary right now, according to 2011 census, when South Sudan was getting independent, according to the census, there are 16,000 South Sudanese community members in Calgary.
16,000.
Yes.
Oh, that's a huge community, eh?
Yeah. Big community. Yeah, the
Oh, wow.
biggest community in Canada. Yeah.
Biggest Sudanese,
Yes.
South Sudanese community in Canada.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
And so roughly you have like 20 years, or I would say, so the 90s was got a different kind of community versus the 1990 forward. Is that fair statement?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because there were fewer people that were coming from 1990, 89 to 99.
Right.
Then the influx of South Sudanese started arriving in 2000.
Oh, okay.
So it's now 20 years of being
20
in Calgary. Yeah, yeah.
And to be honest with you, I mean, this is one of the important reason why I really want to connect with the South Sudanese community, because I see it as a 20 years in the making, and I want to get into so-called. We don't want to talk. I want to get to the challenges in the first 10 years and the challenges in the second 10 years. If that's something you can share with us, Khor.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah, the first 10 years of influx, it was a little bit, it was interesting. It was,
Right.
when people come to Canada or to a new environment or a new country, people get excited. They are with new life. Some people came from refugee camps where they don't get the opportunity to work and make money,
Right.
or to engage in activities because of living in refugee camps for years. Because
Right.
Sudan has been in civil war for many years. It's just a sequence of different segments of being in refugee camps, starting from 1955, and there was peace agreement in 1972. People went back, and then the civil war started again in 2000 and in 1983. And
Right.
then that was really challenging phase. It was exciting because people were in honeymoon in Canada with excitement that they come to new country and a paradise, as the people call it. So the South Sudanese refugees were calling Canada sort of like the paradise at that point, at the
Right.
first 10 years. And then after the first 10 years, when going to the segment of the other decade, and then
Right.
it becomes challenging. Now kids are growing up, and new challenges arrive, and the honeymoon is over, and it's a whole different game. Then you can find a lot of crisis in the families. You see a lot of family breakdowns. You
Right.
see a lot of school dropouts between I could say between 2010 to 2020. You can see the whole accumulated crisis that has been building while people don't know what they are working on with the excitement. So then around 2010 to 2020, you see the real crisis in the community, with
Oh, I see.
breakdown, with family fighting, conflict among the family members, community
So
leaders conflict. Yeah.
before we
Yeah.
get into the second 10 years, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
we're gonna cover the first 10 years. So
Yes.
as you said, the first 10 years was kind of like the honeymoon,
Yes.
the paradise,
The paradise. Yeah.
the paradise phase,
Yes.
where people just arrived, and there must be some challenges settling in. I think majority of the people, they didn't speak English at that time. So tell me about that the challenges of that part. I mean, there's honey, but also there's some kind of sourness. So tell me about that part first, and then we get to the other part.
That is very true. Yes, as I said, the part of honeymoon. It's where when people get excited and getting jobs and working and making money and supporting their families back in refugee camps and supporting their families here.
Right.
Tried making money. It was good. The sourness was different because the sourness would be the challenges of learning a new language for most who have never been to school, or for those that went to school and they are professionals. There are some challenges in that.
Right.
So people that came as professionals that thought that, oh, yeah, to a new country, I'm going to do the same job that I was doing back home. So, for example, there were some that came to Canada as lawyers, engineers, doctors, you name it. They had hope that if they get to Canada, or accountants, or different fields. So they thought that by coming to Canada, they will do the same job that they were doing back home.
Yes.
Then they were struggling to trying to better their English, because that was the part of excitement, learning a new language now, so that when they learn the new language, they would be able to return to their profession.
Yes.
Since they now can communicate. But and then you can now see how the struggle was going on, and things. There were a little bit of the beginning of frustration, and the kids growing up, and misunderstanding with kids. Now the kids speak English and their families do not, and then using the kids as the translator in the family.
Right.
And all sort of things. So it was there were challenges, but at that first phase of a decade, there were more excitement. There were more honey than
More honey than
the
money.
second phase. Yes.
So for those who just joining in, we're trying to get to in the Black Month celebrate the Black History Month celebration. This is an effort to bring to Calgary more information about one of its community, the South Sudanese community, especially for us who are involved in the newcomers community. I think the South Sudanese community experience is so important for all of us. So please, if you don't mind, all of the people with us, if you don't mind, just share this video with whatever people you might know, and then hopefully we can spread the word. So Khor is my guest tonight, and he is he's a community activist, a community leaders, and also he's the president of the South Sudanese Community Association. So Khor, in the beginning, pretty much everybody came here, know English, and you have to go through the process, learning the system, knowing the city, get your papers, register to study English and all that stuff. So at that time, roughly how many years you think your community, an average, took to at least to feel comfortable talking and connecting with Calgarian without using interpreters and being independent language-wise? How many years, an average, you think your community took to be independent from or being able to communicate, I should say?
Yeah. Yes. I think as you asked the question, it's very hard, and I think it's very hard to determine, and I think it's different from one person to another.
Right.
There were people, although there were a lot of challenges with language, there were people that were speaking a language already. There were people that spoke English in Sudan. So those people, they didn't have any problem. So their challenge was new culture, behaving in a certain ways in which it's different from the culture in Sudan and South Sudan.
Right.
So then those people, they caught up quickly. But the younger the person is, I think for most young people catch up with the new culture and language easier than the other or the older one. Or I would say that too, women's were more women's I would say women integration was more easier than men. They were able to learn the language as quickly as possible. Right. And I think maybe because of their close association with the kids, and kids coming from school speaking English already, then their moms were able to learn the language as quickly as possible. So yeah, it took. I would say I could see some people do not need an interpreters by I think around 2017, 18.
Right.
People become familiar with communicating to by themselves at that time. So most people did
Most
around
people do.
2000 here, around 2007 and 2008 to 2010. So that's when I would say that a lot of people got acquainted with speaking English or get comfortable with speaking English.
Right.
So yeah.
Was it hard? Was it hard for you at that time, as new community from South Sudan or from African background? Was it hard for you to feel to? Was it hard for you to settle back in Calgary back in the days in 2000 up to 2011 at that time? Was there any issues in terms of like racism or any kind of like discriminations at all?
I think with that, I think I would say it's sometimes you don't obviously see racism in some sense, I would say. But I think sometimes people frustrate about how things are different. And I think we need to clear that up and say sometimes we associate a challenge with racism. And racism, I think, comes in a different forms. I would say I think you would be more exposed to racism if you are, for example, going to if you are going to school, for example,
Right.
or if you are going to, or maybe at work, somebody would tell you that, tell you an insultful language by asking you things about the color of your skin. And I think too, for some who do not know, sometimes I don't take it as an insult, because if somebody asks me about, maybe somebody has never seen or never met a black person, maybe somebody has just never have seen a black person only on documentary or in a or on TV and things like that. So when somebody asks you, because somebody now saw an actual person, not on TV, I think it's good for somebody to walk into to me and ask,
And talk to you.
where are you from? I think I sometimes I consider it as an interest person. Somebody is just interested in learning about you, about who you are, about where you come from. So sometimes I don't take it that as a discrimination.
Right.
But what I would consider as as experiencing discrimination is sometimes when you are going to school and you are told, oh yeah, no, you can't make it. You can't, like I remembered I was asked once, oh, you wanted to go to what is your goal? What's your educational goal? When I was doing ESL, and I think there was a time I was asked, I was told, no, you can't do it because you don't speak English.
Right.
And I was like, what? Would it be, don't you think I will be, I'm now doing ESL, don't you think I would be able to learn English in the future and be able to continue going to university?
Right.
I think that's when some sort of a discrimination would play, when somebody's trying to put you down by saying,
yes,
you can't speak English, so you can't do well. I think
I see.
that comment I consider as a discrimination. But when somebody asks me where I'm from, and and I've never seen a black person in real person, I would be more of trying to teach that person about black people, about myself, what I am, where I come from, what kind of culture that I belong. Those I don't consider them as discrimination. Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good insight, Core Top. Core Top, my next question is, at what stage of this journey of last 20 years for your community, you start to see a divergence between the first the people who came from South Sudan, the refugees who came in South Sudan, and their kids? At what point you start to see the gap between parents and children start to surface, if any?
Yeah. No, definitely. That is an obvious. I think around 2005, I would say, between 2005 and 2018,
Right,
people started to see that the gap, the widening gap between the parents and the kids,
right,
because now the kids are now learn to be totally Canadian, and the parents still stick on their hanging on their cultures and their their community.
yes,
And I would like to mention this, sometimes because of the stereotype, because sometimes too with the kids, when they learn things about Canada and Canadian history and culture and all sort of things, I think there is some stereotypes about Africa.
okay,
Whatever the kids see in their classrooms or in their schools or in playgrounds, about the stereotype on Africa, and
right,
the way Africa is poor, and everybody is stupid, and all sort of those stereotypes.
right,
Kids bring them home and tell to their parents that, oh, I don't like Africa because
right,
it's people are poor, people are stupid, and I think if some kids know exactly what Africa is,
right,
for somebody like me that knows Africa, how beautiful it is, these are just stereotypes. And if you look at it too, sometimes the stereotype about the conflicts and wars. I think sometimes the big guys are just playing the games, you know, selling weapons to third world country to fight, but that is a business game. So to stereotype about Africa or the third world country that it's bad. The kids come home with that attitude and tell the parent, oh, yeah, you came from Africa. Your people are not good. They are stupid, and they are, it's poor and all sort of things. But yeah, those are the things that you can see, the widening gap between the parents and the kids. Yeah.
So were the kids at that time making an effort to distinguish themselves from Africa as being Canadian, and to say we're Canadian, like as
Yes.
if, like, being who they are, it's kind of like something people might associate them with something that negative. Uh, wh-
Yes.
so they were subconsciously doing that, because we hear this even within our own communities, like, when you see so many tribes say, you know what, oh, these Arabs, those this that, we don't want to associate with them. I'm different. So,
Yeah.
fortunately, we say that as well.
Yeah. No, that really, it's very common to the kids, because that's how they differentiate. I think it could have been good if they do it for a good reason,
Right.
but they do it for a bad reason by judging their parents and consider them as such. Yeah.
So at that time, 20 years ago, the first influx, parents, kids, everybody came together. At that time, did you notice that parents, I mean, adults at that time, were they more cocooned into their community and culture, or were they open to society, or they just stuck together and they formed their own communals, their own communities, and really that they are paying, or they paid a price after, where the kids got integrated so fast and well, and the adult kept pretty much in the South Sudanese culture still. Does that happen, or it took them too long to break that shell, or is still there?
Yes, that's a good point. I would say definitely it's there, because for years, as I already explained, the widening gap between parents and kids, the parents were more attached to their own culture, and they have events, their cultural events, where they go enjoy the time in their traditional dances, in their using their traditional language, and as a way of communication, having their events in their own environment, whereas at that point the kids were refusing to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So once there is an event where adults were going to or are going to, then the kid would say, no, I don't want it to go, because it's not for me. I'm Canadian. And sort of saying that I don't entertain those nonsense activities or culture that you have. So I would rather go to Canadian events
Right.
or any activities associated with Canada than activities associated with Sudan or South Sudan.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. So within the Arabic communities, and maybe more specifically, being familiar with the Syrian culture myself, and Arabic in general, I'm probably with a Muslim background. There's always a fear that we're going to lose our kids to the bigger society. We're going to lose our own culture. They're going to lose our language. They're going to lose our heritage. So there was a struggle between parents and kids, like how to preserve, and the other side is how to integrate. Is that also a common fear among the Sudanese community, preserving the culture and the traditions, even though majority of maybe religion is not as big part of it as much as culturally?
Yeah. I would say yes. That is a factor to in the South Sudanese community. It's a factor because yes, when we talked about kids that are in association with Canadian activities, that is really that intention that the kids wanted to be integrated themselves into a bigger culture, into a bigger Canadian culture,
Right.
whereas the parents are able to, they trying to maintain their traditional culture, and yes, there were fear, or is still there is still fear today that we are going to lose our identity if all the kids are just going to be sort of melt themselves into Canadian culture, and then there wouldn't be any identity.
Right.
So after the adults' time is over, then what is South Sudanese community going to look like in the future? If these kids grow up and become adults, and then the current adults become seniors, or they
Right.
are gone for good, then is there going to be, there are questions such as, is South Sudanese community still going to exist in couple of years when,
Oh, really?
yes, so when the current kids are not going to be speaking their dialects or their cultural languages, because the language come with culture.
Yeah. So
So
true.
when you speak a language, you understand the culture of in which the language is from.
Right.
Then there is that fear of saying, now we are growing kids that do not speak our languages, and that do not understand our culture.
Yeah.
Are we going to be still South Sudanese community in 50 years, 100 years? So those are the questions that linger with the community currently. Yeah,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
So I remember I heard you once talking about a very interesting point, which is the different meaning of community in the Western society in Canada versus in the communities of, like, other countries, whether South Sudan, Syria, all the other countries. So at that time, did you feel, or do you think up till now, do you feel that the sense of community, the sense of community building, was it, let's say, a successful to understand the need of the South Sudanese community, how to bring people together? Because I feel like, especially those who try to work on bridging communities and stuff, they go by the books. They have like a handbook, they follow this, they do this, they do this, they do that, and all the stuff. But for us who came from different backgrounds, I mean, the sense of community is a complete different rules and complete different steps. So would you please share that with me a little bit, especially when I say community, in your community, what exactly does it mean?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Yes, I talk about that a lot, and within that period that I talked about, the periods of first 10 years,
Yeah,
that is
honeymoon.
the honeymoon period. I
Yes.
started around 2000, I think 2007, 2008, and 9 and 10. I started worried about the community, because for me at that time, I started understanding what a community means in Canada and what a community means in South Sudanese community or elsewhere.
Right.
So I came to a conclusion that there are going to be a problem in the future, because when we talk about the community, it's not what the Canadian considered as community.
Right.
So our community, for example, our communities are South Sudanese, Syrian community,
Yeah.
Ethiopian community, Lebanese community,
Iraqi community.
Iraqi community, you name it, Kenyan community, Ugandan community. For those of us that come from a traditional community, the community is such as that. It comes with the language, with the culture that is not written in a book, as you said it. Yeah, a community that is not, that does not follow what is written in a book. It's our oral, very authentic,
right,
and very organic kind of community.
And it's hard to predict.
And hard to predict. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And hard to predict. Then for me to understand that in Canada, a community is a community association. So to a Canadian context, a community is a physical place.
Right.
Where in our countries too, what it is. It's physical space, yes. But when we come to Canada, to new country, the community become that belief, that philosophical and psychological belief of what our culture is all about.
Right.
But to Canadian to Canadian society, a community is a physical place. So if you live in, for example, if you live in Belline or Dover community,
Forest Lawn,
Forest Lawn community, you live in you name them. So that is the community. Now, as newcomers to Canada, we are challenged by that. When we talk about the community, to Canadian, it's a physical place. It's where you live.
Yes.
But with us, it's what we believe in. It's what we have in mind, which does not exist. It's cultural. So then, now from what I realized, I started calling our communities as cultural community. That is an abstract. It does not exist, but it in a physical space, but it exists in a brain, in our brains.
Yes.
So then, now, how are we going to function? So I started questioning myself. How are we going to function with a community that we hold in our head, but we don't have a physical place for it?
Right.
So this really get me into saying there is need to bring this into into reality. We need to do something about this. So then doing something about it is that it was about 2013 or 2014, I came up with an initiative called Meet the Neighbors. So Meet the Neighbors is that, for example, I look at South Sudanese that are cultural community,
Right.
that when they ask for a community association to run their activities, they don't have a physical place, because the physical place, they don't all live in one place. They are all over the city,
All over the
but
city.
they still call themselves a community, but they are all over the city, all over Calgary. So this is a problem. So I came up with an idea of Meet the Neighbors. With Meet the Neighbors, I'm trying to integrate the physical community with the cultural community in our brain, so
Yes.
that we have to have somewhere we know this is our physical community. Wherever you are, whether you are a Syrian or you are Iraqi or South Sudanese or Ethiopian, your physical place is your community, but you have a second home that is your cultural community. So you connect with both,
So
because
true.
within the culture that we live in, we only believe in our cultural community that do not exist. But I want us to believe that we do not need to ignore our physical community. So wherever community association area you lived in, be part of the community association. So I'm trying to encourage everybody, every community association or any cultural community, to participate in their physical community, so that we take care
Yeah.
of our land.
Yeah. Our
We,
neighbors.
yes, our neighbors. We
Yes.
protect, we create the safety in our neighbors, in our community neighborhood, in our environment.
Right.
So this is why I came up with an idea of Meet the Neighbors. So just meet your neighbor, get to know your neighbor. By knowing your neighbor, you are promoting the safety, and you are also encouraging the diversity
So
in
true.
our communities. So then I came up with an idea of Meet the Neighbors.
So, Khor, is this quote unquote struggle, I should say, well, I don't know if this is the right word or not, between a physical community and the emotional community? Because emotional community, in let's say Syrian case, in the South Sudanese case, it's all South Sudanese in Calgary. It's one community that's called South Sudanese Community. It could be anywhere in Calgary. Versus, let's say, if you go to Forest Lawn community, a place of anybody and everybody. So that's what I meant by the two branches, or the conflict of belonging to a community. It's not a conflict, but it's a reality.
Yeah,
And
it's a reality.
and I
Exactly.
think
That's what it
all
is. Yeah.
newcomers, especially from the old worlds, Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and all that stuff, they might share the similar. I don't know about South America, but that struggle, is it also with the new generation, or that's only for those people who came, born, raised, and outside of Canada?
Yes, that's a good question. I think I might not be sure about my answer on this, but I will try my best. I think, to me, I would say it applied to new generations as well.
Also apply to
Because,
new generation.
yes, because I work in the school system for 6 years
Right.
with Catholic school system as a youth worker,
Right.
working with newcomers youth.
Right.
What often happens is, within the school system, you can see the South Sudanese flogging together, or the African community youth flogging together. The Arabs or the Syrian youth are flogging together. You can see the layers as well, even though there is that belief that they are part
Kenny.
of Canadian society. They go and form a smaller group So within my experience through the school, that's why I might be wrong, but I would say yes, it applied to everyone. There is that notion of coming together, whether those that do not even speak English, they feel that they are Canadian and integrated themselves into Canadian system and into the Canadian culture. They have the culture, but they still form their bubble within that culture. So with that, then I would say yes, it does apply to the new generation. Yeah.
Okay, Khor Top, I don't know much about the South Sudanese community or culture. Is when it comes to men and women, are they the sharing responsibility and representation? Is it very similar to the rest of the North, North Africa or African and Middle Eastern culture, or men and women pretty much involved in the front line of the community engagements and responsibility, or there is a man woman kind of like one this one that?
Yeah, that's good question. I think I would say there are some sort of dimension that you just stated. With the South Sudanese community, I think we have a challenge sometimes too when we have community engagements or any community activities. You can see some events there are more men than women. There are fewer women, and because of that, I think it comes from a culture where in communities where South Sudanese come from, there are this sort of role, gender roles that comes into play.
Right.
But I think it's more with now. It's more of I can see some instances where both women and men participate in community engagement equally, but more likely the men are morely ahead of women, I would say, and I think with that notion, with the assumption of role or gender roles differences,
Right.
that come to play sometimes, but sometimes it's very similar because with the North African culture that South Sudanese is part of because of the of being part of Sudan in general. There is that culture of gender differences, but it's a little bit dynamic, a little bit different. You can see women equally participating in community engagement roles and activities than I would say when I think back in Sudan it might be different, but here both men and women participate differently. But sometimes we have a challenge in any initiative
Right.
that is started by men and do not involve women at the first place. Then it becomes challenging for women to get involved now because the men are running ahead with it and continue going through those activities or the community engagement, and the women would say, well, you guys started it, you finish it because because
So
you did
true.
not involve us at the first place. So what's the point of trying to get us involved now after you left us, and then we wouldn't join? But sometimes they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Khor, for being transparent with your answer, because we do see this inequality, gender inequality in all communities and stuff. But hopefully, with time, things will progress, and we're all going to be learning and improving. Kortab, there's a South Sudanese Canadian now born, raised in this country, and they are aged between probably 20 to 15, 10 years old. Tell me about the struggle of this born, raised Canadian South Sudanese.
I think if I would comment on kids that are born in Canada, a South Sudanese kid born in Canada, if you look at the range, the percentage of those born in Canada, you can see some that are successful in their journey or career or life.
Right.
Then you would see a good number of them that are not doing really well with the challenges that may be related to cultural shock and that
Still?
that is going on within their families, and also that comes to them. Because with cultural differences here, I mean, sometimes too with I think Canadian education very different from education at in
Yeah.
third world or in Africa.
Traditional way.
Yes, because learning about the education system in Canada, that the schools, the parents are part of the education of the children, but coming from Sudan or Ethiopia, I went to school in Ethiopia. So coming from that culture, the school system is absolutely responsible for the education or learning of the students.
Right.
But in Canada, it's 50-50. The families have to contribute to their children education and their children involvement in activities, but back home is not.
You
And I
just throw
think that
them.
yes, they just throw them somewhere, and they throw them to school, and they think the system will take the system
Doctors.
will take care of the system will take care of.
Yes.
But that is not the case in Canada. Parents are part of the contribution to their kids' learning. Then now, how do you deal with kids that their parents are not educated? They cannot contribute much to their children educations, and also maybe kids are busy. Well, they can look for maybe a tutor or after school program for the kids.
Right.
But what about for those that are working full time, or 2 jobs or 3 jobs,
Right.
to support their families? Then they don't even have time to support their kids' education, because they only know that the kid go to school. Even when the kids are failing in school, they don't even know what's going on. Sometimes some parents, they even don't know that the kids bring home some homework for the parent to help. Maybe sometimes they can't help because even if they have time, they don't have the education or the capacity to help them.
Okay.
So that become a failure to these kids that grow up in Canada. So, but when I see kids that are successful who come from Sudan or South Sudan or everywhere, through whatever ways they come, because a lot of Sudanese, they came through Ethiopia, Egypt, Kenya, Uganda. So they don't if they don't know that they are part of their education, then they don't help the kid. Then the kid fail, and when the kid fail, then it's blame on the family. So that's why I call it a cultural part of culture shock,
Right.
because of not knowing what the system is all about. They didn't get a chance to learn about it, and the culture is very education culture is very different.
Right.
So in that way, that's why I would say there are more kids that are unprivileged or given the opportunity, didn't get the opportunity to succeed because of the circumstances and so forth. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Are you concerned about the second generation South Sudanese, second generation that they are still trying to figure their way out here in Canada, or you think they pass this. This is more a parents' issues more than just the kids' issues. And I still, I mean, what I got from you, that conflict, that finding ways, it's not only the problem of the parent, but also the kids. Even the second generation born raised here, what I'm gathering from you is they still feel, I don't want to say they don't belong, but they feel they are different. Is that true?
Yeah, it's you are absolutely true. Because and I think it comes back to what I had said earlier, that it's reality to them, because sometimes too they trying to say that they are part of Canadian culture.
Yeah, okay.
But when they look at themselves,
Sure, okay.
and or they are being told, oh no,
Right.
really, kids, they do things. So sometimes they are being told, oh no, you are not Canadian, you are South Sudanese, or you are African, or you are black.
You're black.
So then to that play a role in that, contribute to why sometimes kids that are trying to integrate themselves into a bigger culture, to a mainstream culture, they are being sort of pushed away a little bit, to say, oh, really, you don't belong here.
Okay.
So that is a concern to me as a person.
Again, I'm trying to learn as much as possible from the last 20 years of your community. So if I ask you this question, if you can name one reason for a very successful South Sudanese community for the last 20 years, one reason why they are so successful, happy, and let's say living a normal life, versus one example of family who we can say they did not, they got, let's say, less fortunate, and they still struggle. So if you can give me like two examples, one good example and why, and one still not good example and why.
Thank you very much. I think that's a good question. So I will go with the good example first.
Okay.
The good example of the success of South Sudanese community is that I would say the love for each other, the caring for each other, the way they are there for each other. They so supportive to one another as individual, or as association, the way they welcome each other, the way they behave to each other. Sometimes that's a positive that I would say, and the resilience that they have. So the support, the caring nature of their culture, and the resilience that they have been through a lot, through civil war, through atrocities, through genocide, and all sort of things. They experience all of this, but they still continue in a positive manner, in a positive sort of mindset, to say that, yes, we're still growing and growing stronger and stronger. So that's one good example. The other bad example that I would say, that I think with some, there are some that feel the sense of isolation. So some people feel that they have nobody in Canada. Maybe they didn't have any relatives that came to Canada. There are some that have no relatives. There are some groups too, some tribes that have nobody that they can speak in their own language, in their own dialect with. That is negative. So it's negative in a way that it's unfortunate that they don't have somebody that they can turn to for care and to keep them stronger and positive. So it's not their they cannot be blamed, I would say, for not having somebody in Canada. But yeah, that's their reality. They have nobody. So they feel the sense of isolation.
So they feel, those who felt isolated,
yes,
and they kept themselves isolated, and they did not seek help from outside.
Yes.
They thought the help is going to come in from the outside. They didn't seek it out, and they kept so So it just is the kind of like falling behind per se.
Yes. So those are the negative, positive and negative, I would say. But the cultural shock that I had mentioned earlier,
Right.
that has created even some individuals that are having unnecessary conflict with individuals. There are conflicts within individuals, community members, or within relatives. You can see even siblings are being in conflict,
Right.
feeling that they don't need each other. That push some people away from being supported as well. So that goes to the sense of isolation when
Okay.
they don't have a reason to be in conflict with somebody they related to, or
Oh, I see.
somebody they come from a one community. Yeah.
Okay, so Kortab, now you almost have 20 years experience as a community. Not only you and your community, pretty much 20 years of solid experience with all the good and bad experiences. If things will turn around and you go back 20 years ago with all the experience you have as a community, what would the things you would do it differently as a community back then? With all the experience you gain right now, and how would you do it differently, and in what way?
Good question. Yeah, I think I had a conversation with a friend of mine two or 3 years ago,
Okay.
and my friend was exactly saying the same thing that you are saying. My friend was saying that I wish I go back and come back to Canada fresh and come with new learning. And then we were just talking as a group, and I think one of the person said, "Well, there's never too late. You can start it fresh. You don't need to go back to Sudan and come back to Canada. You can just start it fresh and start your journey." Because they're saying in Sudanese that sometimes when you go to a place where you've never been, you start on a wrong foot.
Right.
You step in with wrong foot. And
Right.
I think with wrong foot is to say that the excitement that people had during the honeymoon period, people missed the reality of what Canada would have been,
Right.
Or how things would be different. So yeah, there are a lot of missed opportunity that we missed by not knowing what we could have done different. So I would say, how would I start it differently? I think it would be encouraged if I were to come back to Canada as a newcomer again. I would have started by exactly having the two concepts of community, having my culture, holding my cultural community tight as South Sudanese, and also looking into connecting with my physical community as,
Yeah.
for example, Forest Lawn community. Yeah. I could have, if I were to go back and come to Canada, this is where I would step on the right foot into Canada, and exactly doing that and helping myself to integrate myself into a bigger culture, whereas on the other hand, I'm keeping my culture in a way that, for one, I could have created a network of bigger community connecting with all the communities in Calgary,
Right.
or cultural communities in Calgary, or I would be better off to be connected with my kids, because if I integrate myself well into Canada, we could have an understanding with my kids.
Right.
So there, as community, we miss that. We disintegrated with our families, with our kids, because we were not willing to integrate ourselves into a culture of the new environment. So
I
that
see.
would be my starting point.
Okay, that's a very good point. Kortab, do you feel that the government assigned agencies and all the other agencies that works with newcomers and refugees and new and immigrants. Do you think they did their job to the way it should, or they let's say or they impressed you, they did more than what you expected, or you think there's areas of improvement, and if so, in what way, which areas?
Thank you very much. I think that's my most ever question that I always love to answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that the agencies that are working in the city or in Canada are doing anything wrong, but they missed how they can do things better. How do they miss? And sometimes I don't blame them for missing what and how they could have handled community members or newcomers. One part is that they don't really work closely with the community, but what they intend to do is just work. And I think this is the nature of charities.
Yes.
Organization look for funding. Oh, we are doing here, we are doing that. And I think the system set them up to fail to help the newcomers.
Wow.
So I blame it on the system. The system does not allow them because, as you mentioned earlier, they go by the book. It's what is written. They can't go beyond it. They can't go above it. They just follow what is written. Just do this, that, and that. So
Right.
they try to help, but their hand is tied by the system because they can't go over it. I think that's why even when they have interactions or community engagements or community development strategies with the communities, they miss that because they are being held back by saying, no, we are not allowed to do that. We can't do it because the government does not allow us to do it. The funders do not allow us to do it. This is wrong. I think this is a problem with the system. It's not the agencies that fail, but they are being failed by the system. And the communities right now, like South Sudanese or African communities or any newcomer community, are blaming the agencies working for newcomers, the immigrant serving agencies. They are blaming them for failing them, but their hands are tied by where the funding is coming from. So that's how they fail the communities. And I think this is something that need to change. We need to look at funding in differently, not the way it works right now, because it's failing the way the funding system works right now. It's really failing the communities.
So I totally see that, and I totally agree with that. Just like our friend here, John Claude, also says, "Well said, Khor." And Tahiyya, as our Tahiyya, John Claude. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Well said. Definitely well said, Khor Top. There's a question from Musab saying,
Abdullah, thank you, Abdul.
This is Musab Abdul said, Mr. Khor Top, do you believe the Sudanese community are willing to go over and beyond for training for our youth, and will youth listen today?
That's a good question. Thank you, Musab. This is a good question. I think I would say the youth need help. They are just looking for help, but they couldn't find it anywhere else. They need a direction.
Right.
What they are missing is that they need role models. They need people that they can look up to and say that within the community, there could be successful people that they see and look up to them, because Sometimes here is the thing, why our youth do not listen to us. Our youth look at us as failure because we have been exhausting the community. We have been running communities for a long time. The community has no resources for them to be successful, so that the youth see that their adults, mentors and role models, or
Right.
fathers or uncles, aunties and friends are successful. So what the youth see always is the failure. If they see the failure, how could they listen to us? But the other thing is, the youth want us to work together, because we are trying to work separately, and
Right.
that is allowing us to fail as well.
So true.
We don't unite and work together with one spirit, whereby we can now motivate and inspire the youth to follow the suit, to follow the path of the adults that
So
are
true.
meant to be role model to them. This is where, when we fail, our youth fail.
So true. And
And we fail simply because of the resources.
our resources. And you
Yeah.
don't think yeah, this is my goodness, Kortab, this is such an important topic to be discussed thoroughly, because quite honestly, I hear everybody's talking about youth as a slogan to get funding, more than just really as a serious problem that really need to be addressed. And that's where, as you said, like, it's very hard when you see adults as a failure, and adults look at the youth saying, oh my god, they don't know what the hell they're doing, we are losing them. So the trust is so not there, and the role model is not there. And I don't want to paint like a dark page, but seriously, what you just said, it's the struggle of all new immigrant communities, especially those refugees background, or who just like came, let's say, they are not educated, they came from rural areas of their countries and stuff. This is complete different environment for them. So the question is, at least we want to wrap up this chat tonight, and let's at least come up with one idea as a solution. I love your concept of building, get to know your neighbor, get to understand there is two type of belonging. You belong to your physical community, you belong to your cultural communities, and try to find keep both of them. So the question is, what would be at least something we're going to take out of this 1 hour conversation and take it home and try to work on it, in hope that we're going to be all going to improve, especially when it comes to youth, Kortab?
Thank you very much, Sam. Yes, how I know this is that our youth considered us as failure is that I worked within the school system for 7 years,
Right.
working with junior high school kids and high school kids, preparing them to go to universities, to colleges, and to work. So I did that for 7 years.
Okay.
So that's when I learned that, oh yeah, the problem with youth is not the problem of the youth. It's the problem of the adults, because they see a failure and then what the hell do they need to? For example, there are a lot of kids that knows, they tell me, there are a lot of adults, your peers, they tell me, your peers, they went to universities in Canada, but they can't get jobs. So why would you encourage me to be successful when nobody is successful? Nobody goes to university and get a job. And that goes back to saying, I think we put resources into wrong place, because we need to empower these professionals that are educated in Canada to be able to put to work, so that the youth see them that, okay, they are doing well, so I need to do well too. So this is where, and for your question, is for example, I would start with what John Cloud is working on. I take my kids to John Cloud's Soccer Without Border program.
Yes, beautiful organization.
It's a wonderful program.
Yes.
The kids love it. What's neat is that we sort of need to support initiatives like that.
So true.
So that we engage our youth from young age to activities. What they are missing is having activities,
So
having programs. And we need to be responsible. For example, I get time or my wife get time to take my kids to the program, but there are some families that do not, simply because they don't have time. When the program is going on, the parents are at work.
Right.
So nobody actually pick up the kids for the programs. So if the community would be responsible to be picking up the kids, to take them to the program, we would be building the community through through engaging these kids. So programs is what I would encourage for our kids to be successful. And any person that said that pretend to work for the community, we need to be real now. We don't need to fake to say that I'm working for the community, I'm doing community stuff, but nothing being seen.
So true.
We need to get serious in this. If somebody is volunteering their time or working for the community, we need to be there for the community. We don't need to just go hang out and call it we are building a community. Entrepreneurship, as Masab said, engage kids in activities like training programs, entrepreneurship, things like music programs, open mics programs, after school programs, soccer program, hockey programs, all the activities that are needed. We need to take responsibility to take them there.
So do you think this should be a responsibility of all these agencies that they are on taxpayer payroll? And I don't want to say charity organization, but because I mean, for community to look into this, that's already community looking after their own families and neighbors and stuff. But don't you think this has to be beyond just a family itself? I mean, these are agencies and organizations, and maybe another associations, and maybe more grassroots communities. They should really help out, increase their programs. And you give a really perfect example of Soccer Without Borders for two reasons. Number one is the outreach they have, and number two, I should say, the outreach. But number one is the funding. This is the organization that I know that they are not really driven by funders as much as they are driven by achievement, results, compassion, and that's why the money follow them. They don't follow the money. And that's a perfect example of what you said, is some people do follow the monies instead of follow what's need to be done. So hopefully we will find, we're going to continue this conversation one way or another, because really in the end, what you just said, Khor Top, it's literally, I hear it in every single other communities. It doesn't really matter which community is that. The only thing is, is that we all sing in our echo chambers, just like, we don't reach out to other communities. We don't learn from other people experiences and stuff. And I want to finish my conversation with you tonight with one last question. I hope that was going to be my last questions. Was there African Canadians role in your community to settle? Was there anybody that came and helped from your community per se, or was just like on its own?
That's a good question. I'll before I answer that question, I wanted to do a follow-up answer a little bit to your last question or your last comment. I think here is a challenge with community, with organization, with agencies.
Right.
The agencies are too many, I would say.
Right.
Yes, too many. But if you look at them, what do? You don't see it. you don't see the reality of what they are doing. They are running. Because you go to an organization and say, oh, I'm looking for CEO so and so. They say, oh, you go here. Then they send you to another organization. They send you to another organization. You get exhausted before you get help. How is that so? People don't see a tangible thing that an organization is doing. Say, oh, we are supporting the community, but people don't really see a tangible thing that they are doing, like Soccer Without Border. You can just see kids being so happy, getting engaged, involved, and what, but organization, I don't see exactly what tangible thing they do. That's where the challenge is. They keep sending you to another organization, referral to another. You feel a lot of paperwork. This is what frustrates the parents. They give up on it. Paper after paper and papers and papers, signing papers for nothing. It's just about running for funding. Oh, we have this number of people that come to us, but people don't see what they are actually looking for. So that is a problem. Yes, back to your question about
is there a support from within the larger
community? About the port.
Yes.
With the South Sudanese community, we have been struggling since I got the leadership of South Sudanese community back in 2014. We have been hustling and struggling, trying to get things into place, and it was a challenge. Always. Now, we are at a point where we are at a success. We founded an organization called Comcan Africana Institute.
Comcan?
Yes, Comcan Africana Institute.
Okay.
It's an institute to provide entrepreneurship, trainings, job trainings, research, advocacy, programs. Like, would love to, talk to John Cloud on how we can partner and work together.
Musab also is a really good.
I know Musab. I lost him for a long time. It's good that when I saw his name there, it's good. Yeah, I was connected with him years ago. He used to participate in the community. So now there is things are coming together.
Right.
And I think with the African communities too, they are in the process of coming together, working together collaboratively. I think things will change and things will improve. It's always, the communities are always dictated by by agencies that they don't get involved so much in the community because their hands are tied by the funders and they can't get anything done. Then the community is struggling in between there, and the organizations are struggling in between there. I think coming with our organization from the grassroots level will be a success and help the communities. So that's what I will. We form a community, an organization called Comcan Africana Institute.
That's beautiful initiative.
So that's part of the success. Yeah.
With all respect to all the agencies, I mean, this is just like really. Hopefully, they're going to take it as a with a goodwill that we try and just to give a positive feedback to improve, not to criticize just for the sake of criticism, but we want to really we want the resources to be used properly, and I think that's what Khor is saying.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the agencies need to work together with the community collaboratively, not just to use the communities as funding source.
Don't work just to reduce. Let me rephrase it. Don't work just to reduce a report that you're going to take it to your boss or to your funder, and they're going to say, "Okay, I'm working. Here's a report." Report is not real work. The real work is what the gentleman is saying.
Yeah.
So I told you that was going to last question, but I think I lied to myself and to you. And do have one last question, and I'm so sorry, but I do have to ask that question. What do you say? I'm a Syrian Canadian myself. What do you say to the new? We were we have an influx of Syrian newcomers for the last 5 years. What would be your advice for somebody who's been here for 20 years, came as a refugee, for this community who just came 2, 3, 4, or 5 years ago? What would be your advice to them? And that would be my last question.
Yeah, my advice to them would go back to my previous answer, saying if I had to go back and come to Canada, I would have started by involving things like, engage in things like community activities, both my cultural community. So my advice to Syrian community is that take your Syrian community as your identity, cultural identity community, take it to heart, work for it to improve the issues that will be unfolding, because that is where we were around 2007, when we were at the stage of honeymoon, excited being in Canada, beautiful paradise, but take it to heart to build your community now before things unfold in an unbelievable way. So what we need to, what I would advise to do is take your two communities as of equal, the Syrian community and your physical community that might be wherever you are, northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest, those 4 quadrants of the city. So, and work and understand too, that is something that challenged the South Sudanese community. Understand that education in Canada it's a collaboration between parents and the school. It's not responsibility of the school alone. It's just working together, checking with the school, go and volunteers in the school, so that the teachers, your kid's teacher knows that you are concerned and you care about your kids and you love them by being part of their education and their learning. So those would be my advice. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's absolutely. I really enjoyed the chat, and I really appreciate the opportunity and being here together tonight. Definitely, we're gonna have more rounds to come. I'm really happy that we have a really good people join us tonight. That hopefully from here we're gonna build on it, and we're gonna be a good example, as you said, to the new generations. And we're going to be it's not as a role model as much as we want to be a good positive energy for us and for our families and for the people around us. So on behalf of all these people who join us tonight, I want to thank you and thank the South Sudanese Community Association for everything you do. And so and please extend our salam, we say, to all your community. Yes. And this is an important month of Black history. That's really this is a recognition of diversity in the city, and we want to just make sure we're just going to be we're going to do our part as a community to acknowledge all this beautiful mosaic in our lives, and hopefully we can learn from each other. And this is a perfect example of the South Sudanese communities who came 20 years ago to share the experience and the struggle and the success with the new community who just came in, let's say 5 years ago or so. So thank you very much for being here with us tonight. And if you have any last word for you to say before I finish.
Thank you, Sam Namora, for inviting me. It's really a privilege and honor to be invited to speak on your platform. I really appreciate it. And lastly, I would like to, as I mentioned earlier, that the success that we did as a community is the creation of Kumkan Africana Institute. I would also would like to acknowledge the funders for the institute. The city of Calgary is one of the funders, and the United Way of Calgary and the area, the Rotary Club of Calgary, Calgary West and Calgary Centennial, and also the Charities of America. Those 4 funders are the funders for Kumkan Africana Institute. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Khor. I will catch you on another time. You have a wonderful weekend.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thanks. So, guys, that would be the end of our 1 hour and 24 minutes. Thank you very much. I mean, I'm doing my part. You're going to do your part. And that way, we just going to all improve one piece at a time. Have a wonderful weekend. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.